Welcome back to another podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. We today are going to be reviewing Wazoo. Do they call themselves a coding bootcamp?
They do, the coding bootcamp.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to be reviewing this coding bootcamp, and I invited on two graduates to give a full transparent review like usual. So let's go ahead and jump right into our intros. It says Hayden. His name's John. Hayden's his friend. So John, would you mind introducing yourself? Let us know when you graduated. Are you still looking for a position or did you find one? And what was your old industry?
Awesome. So, yeah, my name is Jonathan Alanes, and I started Wazoo. I graduated in August of 2020. So that means I started in February of 2020. So I was about like 8 months. And after I graduated from Wazoo, I got into freelancing, got into some companies and stuff like that, mainly just contract stuff. But yeah, I'm looking for something like, permanent, like a more high-end company. And before this, I was working security.
Security for what?
It was at a community area, it was like a gated community. So it was overnight, and that worked out great for my schedule because I was doing graveyard shifts and I was just in a booth. So I would just take my laptop and work on homework. Okay.
Really cool. I remember working graveyard shifts. It can be a hard thing to get used to, but you do have a lot of free time depending on the position.
Yeah, it has its benefits.
Okay, cool. Right. Thanks for sharing. How about you, Mailing?
Well, my name is Maylin Delgado. I started at May 2020. I was supposed to finish around February, but it procrastinated a little bit because of my health. I was taking chemotherapy, and as soon as I graduated, I wasn't able to get into a job quickly because I got pregnant. So, and then after that, I got like around May this year, I started my master's. So I'm more like focused on sharpening my skills more and preparing my portfolio. I just have like my final project that I did with Sai. And right now what I'm doing is coding challenges and like preparing modules for kids in Puerto Rico. Over there, they don't use as usual like React or these kind of libraries or frameworks. So I've been polling the school where I did my bachelor's, and I'm in a group in the software engineering group in Facebook, and I was doing some polls and looking like what is their necessities or what they don't know. And I was planning to start my own YouTube channel and try to teach and sharpen my skills at the same time that I learn myself a little bit more. Like it pushed me a little bit more to learn. And I mentor students over there in Puerto Rico. That's what I'm actually doing.
All right, cool. So why did you pick this coding bootcamp? And we'll talk over each other a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, so I picked up this bootcamp because since I learned in my bachelor's just HTML, CSS, and when I got to look for work or apply for jobs, I was looking at the requirements and I was like, hey, I don't know React, I don't know Angular, what is this? So I was like, what can I do to learn that? So I was looking around and Googling around. I was like, oh, and it popped up boot camps. And I was like, first I was like, should I get into a boot camp or should I try to do it alone? I was like, no, maybe I need a little bit of guidance. And I just jumped into the boot camp.
Why this one?
Well, I liked the curriculum. And I was like, it was more flexible for me because of my condition since I was on treatment. and I was having all these health problems, it was like more easy for me. The due dates for the assignments were Wednesday and Sunday, so they were not conflicting with my treatment or with my daughter's appointments either. So I was like, okay, so that's why it was more easier for me in this place. Other boot camps that were a little bit more intense, maybe 4 hours, and I was not gonna be able to comply with the due dates of the assignments or whatever.
Okay. What about you, John?
I had been coding for a little while before I had started. I started off with Python. I was really interested in working with these things called microbits. I don't know if you've seen these. I had got this little thing, and it allows you to code with Python. So I just started playing around with that, and once you get exposed to things like that, coding and languages, it just get opened up to a whole world. And I saw WazU amongst the boot camps and all that. I saw that SCI was local to where I live, so I just signed up for that, and I really liked the modules. It really made it great because it made it feel kind of like a game, You finish a module and you get little points, and those points add up, and it shows you the progress that you're making. So it worked out for me on my schedule.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's, I guess, jump right into the curriculum, and you could even expand more on that. What do you guys learn? What do you think of the curriculum?
Full stack. I learned full stack.
Me too. I think it was like, it's very friendly, and it's very intense at the same time if you're a newbie. But if you have like more of a knowledge of software development, it will be like more a continuing education, as I did. I already have like that basic knowledge of coding, and it was like reinforcing the basics. And when I jump into the libraries and the frameworks, it was more intense for me, but it was good. I learned React. I like more React than Angular, personally. Yes, I already was familiar with SQL, and it was the first time that I was seeing Mongo. But when I finished my final project, I finished with Firebase. So I explored by myself like another thing. Like that pushed me to learn other languages or explore other libraries. But it was very challenging, but it was very, very, very great. I learned a lot.
Yeah, React was a very important part of that. I remember, that was very important, along with Java. They focused a lot on that as well.
So
Yep.
They mention that you basically learn best practices with an SPA, single page application, with either React or Angular. Do you have a choice in the direction you go with your curriculum?
No, they teach both. And when you do your final project, you pick up what you're gonna do for the front end, if you're gonna use Angular or if you're gonna use React. And if you're gonna do the back end, you have to choose if you want Mongo or if you want SQL or another type of database. But you have that choice when you do your final project when you graduate. But they teach you everything: HCOs, Redux, everything.
Yeah. Even up to like
It's very
the waterfall method. They teach you all of that stuff, how to be agile and everything. A little bit of career services. So they try to teach you like everything that has to do with being a developer, or at least a full stack developer.
And how many hours per day did you invest in this program?
As much as you can, I think. That's
personally, I code every day. I still code every day. And I think that the coolest part and what captured my eye more is that it was you for life. So you have access to the dashboard for life. And when you're gonna do the course with mentors and with instructor, you pick up which language you want. For example, I picked up JavaScript. When I finished and graduated JavaScript, and once I finished and everything was done, I had a choice if you want to add more languages or more modules, that they're for free. You don't have to pay them, and it's for free. So I added C#, I added Java, and you can add Ruby. And they added that those you do it on your own pace with no instructors, but they have the whole curriculum there, and you just go in. You can do that after you graduate from that language per se. So when it comes to JavaScript, they teach you front end, back end, everything. And the only thing when they add those modules, for example, for C# or for Java, is only front end and back end. What they add, they don't add like database or none of that, because they already teach you that.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. Let's take this one step at a time. I definitely have a lot of questions. So what was the actual expectation? It sounds like it was a little bit self-paced potentially, but I mean, it says 33 weeks, so there is some sort of pace. Like, what was their expectation of the number of hours you would invest each week?
They would mention about
22.
2 hours.
22.
They would say if you could, invest at least 2 hours a day.
Okay, so 22 hours. Would you say most students would, spend 22 hours per week, or spend more than that?
I think a lot of people struggle with meeting like at least an hour a day. A lot of times it would be tough for some people. Some of my teammates would barely get to code,
Are there
maybe
any
every other day? Yeah.
Okay, are there any pair programming sessions or group sessions where you're working with other students?
At the end, at the end we can work with. Well, for me, at the very end, we have a group project.
Yeah,
So-
that's the final project. If you have if they can pair you with someone that is finishing that language and at the same is gonna graduate with you. If not, you do your project alone, but you don't do exercises like pair programming. The Slack is open. If you want to reach out to anyone when the instructors put up the workshops, there's what random people come in, and when you're asking question or whatever, sometimes you can see the names of the person. If you want to reach out, you Slack them up, but they don't pair program. You don't do pair programming per se.
So my concern is, John, you had mentioned that some people would barely even be able to invest an hour a day in, right? And so it almost sounds like a semi self-paced program potentially. Like, you could end up with people getting closer to graduation when you end up with that portfolio project at the end. Like, I can almost see people having different skill levels. There being a huge mismatch and people having to carry others. Is that a reality that could happen?
Was my biggest problem, honestly. My biggest problem towards the end was that they didn't allow me to showcase my project by myself. I had to be in a group. So that sucked because I was paired up with people that I felt they definitely did not put as much time into it. They themselves admitted that they didn't work as much on it, but we all got the same grade. And, I did most of the full stack application, I feel like you agree, right, Mealy?
Yes, it happened the same thing to me. I think it was kind of selfish. I was the scrum master of the project, and it was tough. At that time, I was doing my treatments, being pregnant, and dealing with my health condition, having 2 jobs. I was working customer service at that time. And I was, helping my sister in Puerto Rico too, with some stuff, and projects and stuff like that. And it was kind of hard, and everybody was complaining about their time I was at least having the meetings one day of the week, and everybody, they were complaining. We were different time zones. I'm in Eastern time. So that was kind of a tricky part, but no one was working, just one of the girls. I think the girl that had two girls at that time, she was a little bit more helpful. Like, okay, I don't know how to do this. I did it in HTML, and I used to take that HTML and translate it in React, and I was doing the backend alone, so I got a little bit stuck. And at the end, when they told me, "Oh, you want to showcase to career services," I said no. I was like, I'm not gonna showcase something that is incomplete. If a potential employer will jump in, what we're gonna showcase, I want to showcase something good. You only had 6 weeks to do that final project, and I felt that it wasn't complete. It wasn't doing what I wanted to do. So I talked to another instructor and I said, hey, I want to showcase my project alone. So I started to build like a clone. I was watching a tutorial how to build a clone. So I took that tutorial, but I added more pages. I added payments, and I built like a mini e-commerce app, comparing like the Amazon clone, but adding features of my own. And that's what I showcased. So that's what I really did, because if not, I wouldn't never do my presentation to career services.
Okay.
Yeah.
It really feels like you kind of carried the weight a bit at the end there. And I mean, kudos to both of you. I think it probably made you quite a bit stronger. I'm sure it required quite a lot of hours.
That definitely made me feel more confident as a developer. I made just a blog so people could, make posts and all that, but they had to make accounts. I had to use like Eclipse, and it was all based out of Java. So I had to do like everything by myself, like the MVC, the backend. That's where I started from, because I like using the backend and the database, connecting them. And my teammates were supposed to work on React. That was what my other teammate was supposed to do. And the other teammates, because there was only 3 of us, he was supposed to basically help connect all of it together, right? And just provide support. They kept complaining about their time and all that. And it's interesting. It sounds like we were put in like groups of the same age or same demographic, because they were all guys that were about my age. I don't know how your team was comprised of, but these guys were complaining about time and, saying that they couldn't make it. But I mean, we're all busy, no one has that much free time, and, they just didn't help out.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of crazy because like when we had our first meeting, everybody was like, yeah. So everybody had a task, like, okay, you're going to deal with the database. I'm going to do the database. You're going to start working with the front end. So me and such, we're going to work with the back end. And so I'll see you on Friday. So I was always looking at the Kanban board and looking at GitHub, and I didn't know, I wasn't seeing no one pushing code. Nobody knew how to push code. So I had to be going into each other's computer to push up the code so they can see that this girl and that girl and the other one were pushing code, but they never pushed the code. It was me that was like, okay, share your screen. Okay, give me permission so I can. So that was that was how it got done, because like nobody was, what do you have done? Oh, I couldn't do this. I was like, wow.
That happens often. Yeah, that happens very often, where they just, the time comes, say we try to schedule it like almost every few days. So, 2 days off, and then 1 day we have a meeting, 2 days off, and then we have a meeting. And every time we would have a meeting, they just would say that they were still working on it, or that there were some bugs, but then they had this, they would just show me what they had. And me as a developer, and, everything that I was told was like, look, if it doesn't work and if we can't apply it, then it doesn't even count. We're bottlenecked at this point because you didn't actually deliver the deliverable, like what you were supposed to deliver. So that was my issue, is that I would just get a bunch of like, oh, let's let's try this, or you know what, let's start from this other project or this other aspect of the site, and we never could be cohesive. It was
Yeah, that can be really frustrating. And well, I would argue that I hope neither of you ever have to be on a team like that. Sometimes it will happen, but it sounds like there was a very different gap in skill level between, and even just availability and time between what both of you had to do and what others could provide as well. I mean, it sounds like, Mailing, you really didn't even get the project done on time to be able to present it, and you had to spend extra time afterwards to like really work on it and get it to a point where you actually felt good about it. But I want to expand on this because, like I said, there's a lot of things to touch on here. So it was mentioned, John, that so you had kind of built a Java backend. Was there any chance that people could have chosen a different backend language and got to that project work point and not really was able to help you out with anything because maybe they learned JavaScript and Node.js, or did everyone learn the Java backend, or how was that organized?
At the time when we were taking the course, it really, because that's what we learned, it felt like that was the only backend that we could use. In theory, I could have tried using a JavaScript, but it just wasn't in realms in terms of what we had worked on during the modules.
Okay.
It really felt like they wanted us to use Java in particular, and the thing is, like, now as a developer, it's been a year and I've learned other languages. I've worked on like other platforms. I would use a different language now. I probably wouldn't use Java because I'm more of a web developer now, but at the time we used Java. That's what they wanted us to focus on.
Okay. So it sounds like they're a little bit cohesive with at least trying to prepare you with the similar stack. That's important. In terms of the frameworks, so if people were actually dedicating 22 hours at least each week and they picked up, React and Angular, it's going to be a little bit tough when you're learning JavaScript and then two different frameworks with Java on the back end. It's a lot to push in 33 weeks, even with like 21, 22, 23, up to 25 hours per week. It's a part-time program. So to cram all of that in, do you feel like the people that you worked with on the projects might have had their knowledge spread too thin because you learned React and Angular and the program was trying to teach you a variety of things to get exposure versus depth?
I think so. I mean, I think that, but then at the same time, I feel like that's just kind of what they were trying to blame it on. Myself and my other teammates were saying, we would say that they taught us a little bit of everything without really diving in. That's what we said at first, but the thing is, once I really feverishly had to work on this project because the deadline was coming up, once I was getting really scared, like the deer in the headlights and whatnot, I crammed that knowledge that they showed. I really dove into the modules, and there's more into it. I will give them that. There's a lot more into it than you keep in mind, because it's so much information, right? So that's one benefit is that, I mean, you have that information for life, but when you're initially going through the program, it is very difficult because there's just so much information to pack, like you're saying. So, yeah, that's why most people try to just stick to database, or they try to pair you up with someone that prefers front end because they know that it's going to be tough for someone to make a full stack application. But at the same time, I mean, I don't want to brag, but I did that. Like I said, I had to cram it in. I don't even remember that day because it was just pure energy drinks and just working and just tutorials and all that. But I made a full stack application, and just want to say, they said that by myself, I would have gotten a 94. And with the little extra work that my other teammates did, they gave us 2 extra points. So it was a 96.
Wow.
But it was just it felt kind of bad. I wish I would have just been able to do it. I mean, present it myself, but yeah.
Okay.
What I really did, I did a new project. I didn't pick up the old one and added, no, since we were working 3 people on that one, I respected that. So I did something a whole lot different. I pick up a new project and I took it from there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get you. We initially wanted to do a blog, so I just kept with it. But I get what you're saying, because I actually started from scratch. I just started from scratch, and I mean, it gets easier, right, when you do it over and over. So, but yeah, I did the same thing.
Okay. Interesting program. It sounds like, as far as the whole program, they try to keep you at least have consistent knowledge. Do you have tests that you have to pass between modules to say you really don't know enough information to go on to the next section?
They're like questions is there like little questions that you answer the questions, and then you have like hands-on. Those are the ones that the mentors grade you.
Yeah, those are like the tests. Those are like the projects that you have to complete.
How do people that have only spent like an hour every other day pass those tests and get to the final project?
Oh, they can grade you like A, B, C, D, or maybe you have an F. It's like the same grading as a school. So if you don't pass, you don't pass. That's it. And you have to retake the model.
Yeah, retake it. They'll help you out with that, but people do struggle. I know that some people struggle with even just setting up their environment. Sometimes their computer acts up, so there'd be people that just would not turn stuff in, but they're very lenient at first. They would let you like turn in even like text, like text code, through like Notepad or whatever of the code if you couldn't get your environment to run. So yeah, it's tough.
Okay. I guess I have one more question. I kind of have a summary. I'm solidifying some things in my head. When you started picking up frameworks, when you started diving into more complex libraries, do you feel like you were able to pick them up pretty quickly because you had a good, solid understanding of the fundamentals? How well do they do at teaching those fundamentals?
Well, personally, since I had an idea, it wasn't that hard. But when it got to framework, like with Angular, it was a mess.
With Angular, yeah. I mean, at first I struggled with learning the program and whatnot. But once I got into the habit of everything and just learning the fundamentals, it did become easier. They were pretty good with that, like stacking the modules on top of each other, so that like once you pass the fundamentals, kind of how to just keep learning and learning other languages. That was one thing I remember that my mentor would tell me a lot. He was like, don't focus so much on being a pro at one language or learning everything about one language. The goal is to be able to just pick up a language as you go along and just make something out of it, make little changes and all of that. That's the key.
Okay. That philosophy is true, but if you can't even get people to like get a solid understanding of the foundations, where they are incredibly struggling with picking up even just like building something with React on the front end, and they can't even keep up with something like that, it almost feels like they're jumping too quickly, and the modules aren't very cohesive.
I can definitely see that. Yeah.
So
you would need to do like more. It does fall on the person, because I think the only way to really succeed is you have to go beyond the modules. You have to actually take your time and do more of the projects. And that's the way I succeeded. Like everyone else that was struggling, it was because they barely did the modules. But it's like you're saying, like any developer that really like has developed a project or a website, they know like you're going to have to really go above, like test yourself.
I think I'm trying to solidify really what I think of this program, and it does feel like people might start getting a little bit lost towards the end. I don't know what's happening during the program for that to happen. I get a feeling it's because they don't have a hard requirement on the time commitment. That's really the main thing that I'm seeing. What do you think of your instructors and mentors? Do you feel like they give people enough support throughout the program?
Now that I've like gone out of the program and I've kind of seen more of the actual developer world, and because I didn't even really know that there were so many boot camps until after I graduated, and I saw that, right, and I saw that there's like a whole business like this. You see that there's a whole bunch of people like me that they go through these thinking they promise that you'll get a job and all of this. You know, you get out and you don't get as much support. You know, they do hype it up when you're in the program and they promise you all this help, but once you do graduate, like I just messaged them. This is the third time I've messaged them for career help, and they just haven't responded. The first time I actually got a pretty good job, and that was a contracted thing. When the contract was up, I hit them up a second time, and they said they got a company. That company actually never called me or emailed me or anything. And then this is the third time I've asked them for help, and they just haven't even responded yet. And so it's, you know.
How long has it been?
It's been about a week.
Okay. It's kind of long. Do they, like, if you wanted to get feedback on your resume or cover letter or something like that, would you be able to reach out to them, even maybe check your LinkedIn profile?
They try to help you with all of that at the beginning. You know, they'll help you with your resume, and they try to, but that's the one thing, like when you're going through the program, all you have is the little projects that you've done, all the little like hello world things and, you know, stuff like that. It's not, you don't really have much to go off of. And I've seen that, especially trying to apply for certain companies, is that like it's not enough.
Yeah. What I did mostly too was I was trying to reach out to the career services. They got to me later, but I got into my stuff. I already had my LinkedIn profile, right, built up a long time ago. But it was like kind of hard. And when it got to the time that I was looking and scrolling in the LinkedIn, I saw WasU Enterprise. So when I found about WasU Enterprise, I was like, let me try to check if they have, you know, maybe some, like, let me try to look by myself like I'm an outsider. And I tried to apply for a job. They were like, yeah, like, we can help you. She was like, when I call and everything else, and the girl like answered me, she was like, you have a bachelor, you're overqualified, even though if you graduated from our program. I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, because we have positions only for apprentices that only have associate's degree and whatever it can, you know, or maybe a lower, maybe a certificate or something like that. And whatever hours they do on WasU will be applied as credit for a bachelor's. So since you already have a bachelor's, I was like, no, and you know, so I was like, what?
Yeah, that's messed up.
I was like,
that sounds like an excuse, you know, like they were just making up excuses because, I mean, just because you're overqualified doesn't mean that you don't deserve what you had paid for, you know, and you signed up for that, and that's what they agreed to help you with, was to find a job.
Yeah, I was like, hey, you know, I'm overqualified. Can I maybe another position? Or it's like, no. But first they were like, yeah, we have some positions. But I see you have a bachelor. I was like, okay.
No, I don't really think that they even have positions like they're talking about, or if they do, it's just random jobs on Indeed, perhaps, you know, maybe that's their leads and stuff like that is the same thing that you can get if you just apply on Indeed or Monster or Zip Recruiter or any of those. It's the same thing, because like at first the job that I got right away, and they even sounded surprised. That's what was sketchy to me, was they were surprised that I got the job. This man had called me up asking to help him with an app that he had in mind. And this was sketchy from the beginning to the end. It was he had an idea for an app, so this wasn't a legitimate company. This was just something he had saved up money for, and they through Wazoo they helped me sign on with him, and it was horrible. I mean, it was probably one of the worst. Like I've freelanced since then, but that was one of the worst like contracts I've ever had. This guy was not a good employer. It was horrible. They should have either checked it out more or whatnot, but I was pretty much just getting berated. Like it was a bad experience, and it sucked because I dealt with it even through like when I was telling Wazoo about like the verbal stuff that was going on. It was just a lot like he was putting me down. he himself didn't care for technology, so it was a weird dynamic. And Wazoo, they were at first very supportive, saying you're like what's it called when you're like the cover person or whatever, you know, like the poster child or whatever. Like you went through the program, you got top scores, and you got into a company that's giving you starting pay $50K a year. And so they're like, you're like our poster child. And I was even trying to get more people from the school into the company. And when I told them about that, Wazoo was like, they were talking to me like I was their family or this and that. They even kind of used that verbiage whenever they would email me saying like, oh, we'd love to, you know, video you and put you on our website so that we can show people your success story and this and that. Well, after weeks and weeks of like dealing with this guy, like no matter what I did, I would use Google Maps API to help him on his website. I would make icons custom made for him. He never appreciated each of those. He thought it was easy. He thought like it was just a drag and drop kind of thing. He didn't understand that I was using vanilla code to create his custom website. And after a while, I just couldn't handle that anymore. And we just like didn't, just kind of stopped. You know, it wasn't even a legitimate company from anyways. And after that, Wazoo just never responded after that. So yeah, that was what happened.
So first of all, I'm really sorry that happened to you, John. You're describing a situation that isn't super common, but it does happen to aspiring developers that are just trying to get their foot in the door. And it is 100%, and it was 100% Wazoo's responsibility to screen that out if they try to bridge that gap and introduce you and connect you. Right. I hope they learn from it, because it sounds like when it didn't go their way, they kind of just pulled back and maybe got a little bit salty. I don't know what was said or done behind closed doors. Neither do you. All we can do is assume, but you know what you're expressing is they kind of pulled back a little bit, and that's the feeling that you got. And so that to me, that's a red flag. And I think ultimately, like the coding bootcamp, when they're going to charge this amount of money, they step up and take the place of kind of your coach, your mentor. And you know, if they're going to be taking that much money from you, they should be with you until the end, until you finally get that job that you're looking for. And you know, they connected you with someone that could have easily tainted your experience. You could have just quit being a developer and said, screw this. Like, I don't want to deal with this, you know? And I do think that's a red flag. I hope they take this seriously, because I can guarantee you any staff at coding bootcamps, they all watch my videos, at least a few of them. Wazoo, you really screwed up with that one. Career services and that mentorship once you graduate, that's incredibly important. And I'm surprised. I would be curious if other people have stories like that. But this is something that's easily fixable. I'm just going to provide some quick feedback. I have a couple other questions, but you know, like, it is incredibly important. I think this program is a really important example of when you have, especially the longer the program is, when you have so many students going through it and you don't do real checks of where their skill level is to make sure everyone's on the same page. Hold more people back if you need to. Figure out a pricing model that allows you to do that. But if you don't have everyone on the same page, this is a long program, this many months, for them to, like, for people to be struggle this much with the projects and barely be able to work with React or Angular or front end framework. Like if you're saying these things, other students are probably, they had those experiences. Most students just don't speak up about these negative experiences. So like a quick fix for this is to figure out a system, and maybe it is in your pricing model to be able to accommodate this, to just make sure everyone's on the same page going forward. This is a long program. You don't do that, like everything goes downhill. Like I've seen this with other programs. This is a huge problem that coding boot camps need to solve. And if they don't solve it, your story is hardly the only one. It's actually a very common story among coding boot camps. That is, I think these are easy fixes. And I think I would be curious about what the culture is like, because it doesn't sound like they... I mean, it honestly doesn't sound like they care about every individual. And I think like for them to put so much attention into you being the poster child and, wanting to do a video with you and all that attention, then all of a sudden that gets cut off. That is a bad culture, in my opinion.
That's what sucks. That's what kind of sucked more than anything. Like if they would have kept it consistent, I would have not felt, I think, as upset about it. But it was the immediate shift, between like praising me and wanting to include me in everything they do to just being like, later on, I had a problem. Like there was a company that trying to hire me, and they sent me a problem that was just very, very tough. It was just extremely difficult. So I asked them for help. I just submitted it through their Slack channel. I figured that's something very basic. I hadn't actually never done that before because I had just been freelancing. I did everything myself. But I figured, that's like, they're supposed to help me with this, and it's part of the career services thing, right? So I sent them the problem. And all they sent me was, all they told me was just that it looks very tough. Good luck. Like, I kid you not. Like,
okay.
I mean, if I respect the honesty because it was tough, but I mean, it was like, dude, like, if you guys aren't even as qualified, I mean, like, what's going on? Like, it was really weird.
Well, let me ask you this. Were they trying to stay out of that problem because that's on you to solve it?
I don't think so. I really think that it was because, like, and I'm not saying that I'm super skilled. It's just that I put a lot of time into coding and I like it a lot. So I was good at it. I could make landing pages almost as soon as I started. And instead of, like, for example, when I was working with CSS, I kind of cheated a bit because I used percentages instead of like EM or pixels. I would use percentages when I would style things a lot, and so it made it reactive. It could go from mobile to desktop. So I would do that from the beginning without being taught, and it would surprise the teachers, and they would even say there was stuff that I was doing that they didn't know about. And after I graduated, it made me wonder just how skilled they were, just how skilled my mentors and teachers were, if they thought that, what I was doing back then was impressive. That's actually basic stuff, And the fact that they couldn't help me with those problems just made it even more, like, it made me just more like upset, or just wondering, like, how skilled are they actually?
Did they? Go ahead, Mailing.
It happened to me with Angular, with one mentor, and I asked to the director to switch mentors.
Really?
For another person. Yeah, because there was another mentor that was always asking for help, or other mentors. Everybody used to answer my questions, and I got something in the code that it was okay, and she graded it wrong because instead of putting on single quotes, I put double quotes. And when you're going to do a string, you can do it either with single or with double quotes. Doesn't matter. String is a string. You can use whatever you want for a string. And she was like, no, it's not correct because you didn't put the single quote. I was like, the code is running. The code is running.
Yeah, as far as I remember, from what they taught us is that as long as it's running, that's what they taught us. Because stuff like what you're saying, I've heard of that. I've heard of best practices, right? But they didn't really focus on that as much. So that's weird that they would just be.
So she was like, no, like, you have to do it exactly as I have it. Like, I was like, it's running. It's working perfectly. What you're talking about. And she graded me a C. I was like, what? So I was like, no, I'm not comfortable with this mentor. I need you to switch. me to another person, like this such and such are the people that are helping me. Either of them, I will be comfortable with it. So, and that's what they did. I shouted out to the director, and she was like, "Yeah, don't worry, I will place you with someone else." And I was thinking, because when I was talking earlier about the Was You Enterprise that I tried to get for a job, and I was overqualified. They're looking for apprentice for the positions. So I was like, oh, that's why, because the apprentice are the ones that are taking the mentorship jobs, and they don't really know what they're doing, and they're not hiring experienced people, or maybe people that have a little bit of more skills for those positions when you're mentoring someone.
I'm solidifying a lot of this. All right. So let me ask you this. Did your original mentor, when she graded your application and gave you a bad grade because of those quotes, maybe a couple of other things, did she explain why you needed to use single quotes versus double quotes? Did she dive into why it was a convention?
No, she just graded me. She just only said I just only asked her, like, why do I have a C if I know that the code is all right? No, because you use double quotes instead of single quotes. I was like, it doesn't matter, it's working. Yeah, but it's wrong because you didn't do the single quotes, you did the double quotes. That's it. She just I was like, but you cannot grade me because of that, of the single quote. A string is a string, and it's working.
Yeah.
And the code is organized. I always comment my code.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, it's not, you cannot grade somebody a C, because if they were like trying to focus or highlight more that in that certain problem, like what kind of quotes do you need to use and that's different. But it was like, build this, and it was building something. It was like a portfolio card. So I built my portfolio card, but since I didn't use the single quotes, she was like, no. So another mentor, he was like, it's perfect. What's wrong here? I was like, I just only said, I'm going to send you my code. Can you check if it's okay? Yeah, what's the problem with it? It's perfect. Okay, so my mentor, but why? It's perfect. I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I was like, kind of like that got me very mad.
Yeah. There's like
if I'm paying for somebody, if I'm paying for someone to teach me, and I'm paying $13,000 for the program, I expect people that are highly qualified to mentor me, not some kid. If I want like a kid to mentor me, I can go to a community and I will learn even a little bit, what I mean, a little bit more. So if I'm paying a ton of money, and, what's going on with this, what's going on with that, I got a little bit mad of that. And career services, first I had a person that was going to reach me out, and then another person got in like, hey, that person's no longer with us, so now I'm going to be your career service manager, blah blah blah. So they reached out. I have a position as a mentor, but I will let you know. So literally like 2 months passed, and never. I was like, hey, don't get my hopes up. If you're gonna give me the position or it's not available, just let me know and I will move on. But usually when you look for a job, is if someone, the first thing they ask you, did you apply at another place or whatever? So I'm, what if they say, yeah, come on and work with me, and the other position, I cannot work at two places at the same time. So I feel that career services, they need a little bit of more more
Yeah.
better services.
Yeah. And plus, it's like you're saying, it doesn't feel like they have a real structured grading system because, at first you could get like pure hundreds and hundreds from these modules that it's just kind of like any other module, like Solo Learn or Hacker Rank, or a lot of these modules where it's just a few little like quizzes stuff, and you pass it at the end, and then it's just an automatic 100. But those hundreds stack up, and I guess once it gets to a part where you get tested on certain things like that, like how you're saying, like little single quotes or double quotes, it's weird because they'll grade you in a weird. It happened to me too, where like I got a lower grade than what I wanted on something, and they said, well, it's fine, like you have a bunch of hundreds, so it works out, and it doesn't feel like that's very professional,
Yeah.
I think the grading system needs a lot of, I mean, we've touched on a few things that need work. I think the grading system, it feels like they're leaning on a very strict rubric. I mean, this is where a grading system that grades your growth as a software engineer starts breaking down. When you want to become a software engineer that becomes a problem solver, you have to break away. And even computer science grads need to work on this. They need to break away and learn you'll learn how to work on different teams, but you need to learn applicable skills and throw yourself into solving a real problem with a real technical solution. And a lot of computer science grads, when they graduate, they're all of a sudden realizing, I don't really have a portfolio of actual projects to showcase. And I don't know up-to-date skills necessarily. And so, when you're told that as a software engineer, when you're growing, you got an A, you're doing an awesome job. Yeah. When you have this bad of a grading system, it makes you feel like you are progressing, and getting you to code more and more. Eventually you will become a software engineer as long as you don't give up. But
you're right.
Students need that feedback early. It's okay to be critical, but explain if you're going to enforce conventions like the single versus double quote, just explain it. It's okay to teach you that, mailing, but if you're just saying, well, now you just get a bad grade because you didn't use the double quote or the single quote, it's that doesn't help anyone. That doesn't teach a software engineer why conventions even matter. It's so this is where the grading system like this starts to break down. I think it's horrible. I think software engineers, and this is my personal opinion that I'm injecting into this conversation, but it kind of elaborates on what you're saying. Software engineers need to break away from the traditional educational model. They need to apply their skills constantly as they're learning fundamentals towards actual projects that solve real problems, because that, as a professional software engineer, is what you do. You are a problem solver. And you mentioned this idea, you should be able to pick up, or they had taught that you should be able to just pick up a language when you needed it. That is true. But they haven't even gotten past that first step of teaching, what are why do these popular conventions exist in Java? Why do these popular conventions exist in Angular? And really at least dive into a little bit of depth, especially with fundamentals, so you understand why all these frameworks are getting built, what problems they actually solve, why these conventions are enforced. It sounds like they kind of just have, instructors or mentors that are grading based on this arbitrary rubric, and there's a separation there that they need to solve for.
I don't feel like they're being as honest. They, like how I was mentioning, they make it sound like you're going to get a job at Google or something right after making your little portfolio page and stuff like that. But it's like you're saying, they focus more on just the grades and I guess on getting your hopes up or making you feel like you're really developing, but they don't really throw out usable projects, making you, having you make a landing page, or, learning how to deploy, learning how to set up a hosting environment, so that you can actually have something that you can share to people. They never mentioned hosting or deployment. I never heard of Bluehost or HostingGator or any of these hosting providers that would have allowed us to make an actual website. We kind of just used AWS, kind of just made instances so we can make a mock website. But these weren't actual .coms. So it would have been nice if we learned real world, web development.
Well, to be fair, I mean, so you basically hosted your website on AWS?
When we went through the course, Kind of, yeah. We used something like that, like so it was some weird thing. It was, I don't know how to describe it.
The EC3.
Yeah, the EC3,
EC3.
they basically, it's like they paid, you had like $17 in this account, and for every like minute that this fake site was up, it was drawing from that account. But you didn't have to pay for that. It was just Wazoo provided that. And you could, you could put this little URL and it'll take you to the actual website, but it was just a string of letters and random characters that you would put into the URL and it would take you there.
Okay,
like
so what you're saying is that it didn't really look professional because he didn't help you link up a domain with it?
Yeah, it didn't link up a domain with it. It looked more like what they used to test out live websites. But yeah, they didn't describe, like, I would have loved if they would have talked more in depth about that, like how to actually, when I asked them about that, because they just taught us how to make stuff through Visual Studio Code, right? And Visual Studio Code makes up a remote environment. And when I asked my mentor, how do you actually have a .com? Like, say I want to have my name.com, how do I do that? They really couldn't tell me. They had no idea how to do that. And I had to teach myself how to make my own portfolio, my own website.
Okay. So I'm going to ask two questions, and these are the two final questions. What would be one piece of advice that you would give for people considering Wazoo to be successful in Wazoo and come out job ready?
Code every day, practice a whole lot, and you have to look for more resources and read a lot of documentation. That's the only way.
Yeah. Mine is, if you don't work for a tech company already, say you're just working a regular job and you've never really coded before and you enter this boot camp, don't think that, within 8 months you're going to be ready to go out there and freelance or go out there and get hired and stuff like that. I definitely feel like it takes time, and you need to have projects. You need to have portfolios, like your picture, your name, your bio, your work that you've done, examples of different work that you've done, at least like 5 good projects. And then that's a good portfolio. You need to have stuff like that before you can even start trying to freelance, before you can even start trying to apply to these companies. So, don't listen to any of these boot camps that tell you that it's that easy to get into a company that has like 6 figures or a high end 5-figure salary. That's you're right. That's not a reality.
Okay. I think that's really good advice. I think that's good. I think that gives a holistic picture, and more importantly, it gives people questions to ask. Every person deserves to know what to be aware of, and these are all questions to challenge admissions with Wazoo. These are, if they can't even handle these types of questions, that's a big issue. So yeah. I think all of these are really good questions. It does feel like Wazoo seems a little bit newer. I couldn't even find them on Course Report, but I did just look quickly. It seems like they have very few reviews on Career Karma. I don't know if they're still trying to get their stuff together, but they are charging, it looks like on Career Karma, it mentions $13,200. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Okay, so $13,200. This is a shit show, just to put it bluntly. And I say that because I care about the students. I think they're mismanaging the program. And I don't know if they're taking that feedback well. I don't know if they're replacing mentors. I don't know if they're, replacing career services because, maybe the career services, they're overworked. Maybe they're replacing them because they realize it was a bad hire and they're not really helping people. So I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Maybe they're making an attempt to make this program better. Fingers crossed, that's what I'm hoping for. I think that's what a lot of students are hoping for. But it sounds like they have a lot of work to do. And, at a $13,000 price tag, they deserve to hear that. $13,000 is a lot of money to ask from anyone. Okay, but other than that, I thought that was good. Final piece of advice. Do either of you have anything else to add real quick as we get closer to the end of the podcast?
I think that this program is more focused maybe on people that already have maybe a degree or have even coding knowledge. But if you're a newbie, it's going to be super difficult. Like when you get to the back end, or maybe when you get to even libraries or framework like React or Angular, it's going to be super tough.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just want to say that if anybody needs a website or anything like that, I'm always open to freelance. So my name is John Alanes, and my website is nuadi.tech. So it's nuadi.tech. And you can see my portfolio right there.
Okay, perfect. So we'll jump right into the outros then. John, feel free to elaborate, but if people want to reach out to you, where could they reach you?
My LinkedIn is also John Alanes 8816. Like I said, you can reach me at nuadi.tech, www.nuadi.tech. And I have a bunch of other websites that I work on and stuff like that. So I'm very happy that I can still like help people out and through freelancing, even if I'm not in a big company. I love working with clients. So that's what I'm doing right now. And if anybody needs a website, let me know. I'd be more than happy to work with anyone.
Okay. Sounds good. How about you, Mailing? You muted yourself.
You can find me on LinkedIn as my full name, Mailing Delgado Medina. And that's how you can find me.
Okay.
You can message me and you can find me there. And I'm open to freelance or whatever you need.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for sharing your stories. That's all I have to say. Thank you for sharing. John, Mailing, I think this is going to be really valuable for people. And I just have a lot going through my mind right now, but we'll leave it at that. All right. Thanks. Stick around for a couple minutes, but thanks for coming on.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.